Hello, I'm Kai Rosga, and welcome to Version Up, one lawyer's journey to digitally transform his legal practice. Today I have on as a guest Amy Posner, Associate General Counsel Competition at Amazon. As a fellow in-house lawyer, I have to admit that I'm impressed and even a little bit jealous of how quickly Amy is able to innovate to supercharge her day-to-day work. She has come on the episode to drop some serious knowledge for in-house legal teams looking to benchmark their own efforts, and also law firms wanting to understand what their clients are expecting when it comes to using technology to provide legal services. In my own words, I'd say the formula comes down to having an innovator mindset, small teams, building quickly, experimenting without fear of trying and failing, diving in and building stuff. So going beyond just off-the-shelf tools to leveraging user-friendly agentic tools for developing internally at scale. Human-driven adoption, setting the tone from the top that innovation is expected and rewarded, and then spreading the word department-wide. The result is an impressive list of internal solutions and also some really interesting insights into how we can streamline the interaction between law firms and clients. As always, views expressed are mine and my guest's own. I hope you enjoy the episode. Amy Posner, welcome to Version Up.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am really excited to have you on. You are the first in-house practitioner that's coming on Version Up. We've had some law firm lawyers. We've had a legal ops person from in-house, but you're the first person who, like me, practices law inside a large company. So thank you for bringing that perspective.
It's an interesting perspective and one where I think AI is making its rounds for sure.
It is. And we will get into all sorts of interesting stuff about client law firm relationships around the use of technology. But before we get to the meaty stuff, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Sure. I am an associate general counsel at Amazon. I'm in the enterprise risk group, and my area is competition law. I spent a lot of my career at the FTC, but I started at a law firm first. And 6 years ago, I moved over to Amazon to work on M&A, antitrust counseling, training, litigation, government investigations. It's been super fun, and it's the whole panoply of antitrust law.
Great. So that all rings very familiar to me. I am also sort of an antitrust generalist, meaning I have touched every aspect of antitrust law, which is something that maybe non-lawyers won't appreciate. Gives you opportunity to do not just litigation, not just investigations, not just advisory, not just M&A, but lets you dabble in all of it, which I mentioned because I think it's actually very relevant to the topic of technology, because you and I think in our practice, have done a lot of different kinds of workflows, and we have lots of different ways of advising our clients. And so that gives us a little bit of a window into how technology can help in that process. So I would love for you to just tell us, how have you been using technology in different or new ways?
Well, AI has definitely changed our lives and our work at Amazon in very deep and real ways. And it's made it super exciting because I think it has taken some of the drudgery out of our day-to-day lives. What did we say, to the European Commission on X, 4 years ago? That used to be going through files and trying to see who had the email from, 2022. And now that stuff is really all so much easier. But we've used it in a large variety of ways across all of legal and public policy, not just in recall of information, but in our process flows, how we work with each other. We're experimenting, we're moving quickly. We're given tremendous opportunity to try things. And if they don't work, try something else. And we have great internal and external tools, which I think may make Amazon a little bit unique. We're not reliant fully on external tools. AWS has created QuickSuite, which most people I think are not familiar with. It's not a legal specific tool, but it is a tool that we use every day.
Awesome. I will come back to some of those use cases you talked about. But first, I want to focus on something you mentioned, experimentation. That's really exciting. I will tell you, if you talk to the average lawyer at a Global 500, I do not think that would be their first words that they would use to describe deployment of technology. I don't think large organizations typically give lawyers or users the ability to take that more kind of startup approach, try and fail. What are the advantages or disadvantages of that?
Yeah. So Amazon has this philosophy, the two pizza team, where like you should build things in groups where you can feed the whole team with two pizzas, right? Like you should not start up organizations with, hundreds of people. And if you have, multiple two pizza teams working around the company and everyone's just building things and they're all building the same stuff, it's okay. Like it's okay if two groups happen to be working on the same thing because they'll by definition come at it differently and you'll be able to find out who the winner is. In the legal team, what that means is like, for me, we launched internal tools to create our own chatbots in like the spring of 2025. And, I started thinking, how do I create a antitrust counseling chatbot? I have all this great information that I gathered, materials from materials that law firm lawyers have written for me, guidance on things that I've written, materials that describe our philosophy on a variety of antitrust topics. What if I put that into a chatbot? And, what kind of persona do I have to build around that chatbot? And what kind of guardrails? And that was, we were basically trialing it out amongst our team for much of the summer. And then we moved to Quick Suite in the fall of 2025 and we're able to launch it more broadly within our team. Obviously, we're not just telling everyone at Amazon here, you can go get antitrust guidance in a chatbot because that's not the way we roll, but
So sorry, legal facing or business facing chatbot?
Legal facing.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that makes sense. And so now you are beyond two pizzas, it sounds like. We're just several pizzas.
No. I mean, it's still being run by like just me and somebody else on my team. And we're using it internally on our team. We're still trying to figure out how do we have an end-to-end counseling solution, right? Like people, you may see this. People come to you with an antitrust question and it's not perfectly formed, right? Because they don't understand antitrust. They don't understand all the facts they need to know in order to ask the right question. So part one is a piece of that kind of gets other lawyers at Amazon to ask the right question. They put their question in and it asks them questions so that the chatbot understands all the facts necessary in order to truly answer the question. Then it comes to us, the antitrust lawyers, with this more formalized question. We then, go back to the lawyer who asked the question with the conversation about the answer.
Music to my ears. I completely understand where you're coming from with that in solution approach, that sort of intake through answer. Let me red team that for a second and ask you, wait, we have vendors that are out there. They're like spending all day developing this kind of tool. Why would you go through the effort of building it internally? You can go buy it.
So we're not building the tech, right? Like we're building on top of Quick Suite. And maybe this is a good time to describe what Quick Suite is because it is available on the open market and it is much cheaper than all the legal specific products. I think it's like $40 per subscriber per month, which is super cheap. It gives you access to a research agentic AI, which I use all the time. Like imagine somebody comes to me with a new deal that they want Amazon to do. And I don't know the industry. So I start some research, like explain the industry to me, explain who the players are, explain what you think the market looks like and who's entered and who's exit and it will go and run for an hour and then come back to me with a report where every single sentence that it writes is cited and I can go directly to the individual site and see it for myself. And you can also tell it like sites that you don't want it to look at and sites you do want it to look at. So look at ftc.gov, look at usdoj.gov, right? When you're putting this report for me together. So that's one piece. And then it has another piece where you can build your own chatbots, where you can put information in folders, just like lawyers like, we're very folder specific. And then the chatbots you build on top of whatever set of folders you want to build, you want to use it to. And then a third piece of flows where you can build your own agentic tool.
So this is, I imagine, built on the AWS cloud infrastructure. What
Course.
what large language models does it leverage?
So it actually is, depending on the query that you create, it thinks and decides which language model to use.
Okay. So
and it uses some of our own we have large language models, and we have access to others.
okay. So if one of the things that makes me nervous about using a third-party vendor product is security, and how am I going to be confident that this is not something that can be, hacked or leaked or create cybersecurity or InfoSec concerns, would I be right to assume that because it's sort of running on the AWS architecture, I don't have to worry about that as long as that's my enterprise suite at work? Is that the idea?
That's exactly right. I don't know why this hasn't taken off more, especially legal serverless, because it's so cheap and so it still coordinates with the legal brain and with the folder structure. But if your firm is running on AWS, then you would have the same security.
Okay. So that's cool. So you get to take advantage of that. Is there any other secret sauce here in terms of how you pull this off? So let's say you've got the architecture, you've got the enterprise solution to do it. You've got some smart lawyers thinking about how to come up with great ideas for using technology to support the business better, or maybe internally support each other better. Any other pieces to this that we should be thinking about if we were gaming out? What's the key to kind of achieving this kind of transformation?
Yeah, it's not only support from, but direction from the top. This is a directive from the top of the company, and that is supported layer by layer in a very real way, right? Another very Amazonian thing is using mechanisms. Everyone has good intentions. Everyone wants to get to the right answer. But the only way to ensure you get to the right answer is to put in the right mechanisms so that it is repeatable and you get to the right answer multiple times. So, there are AI goals throughout the company. There are people on certain teams that have been designated AI evangelists who are given more time to experiment, even throughout legal. So there are real mechanisms to ensure that we're pushing here.
So there's sort of like a strategic alignment around it. There's a top-down support for it. I think it's really interesting because I would say that one of the major barriers that you'll see at large organizations, this includes law firms, by the way, as well. I won't speak for government, but I'll only assume that this was the case in any large organization, is an aversion to risk and a fear of failure and a tendency to fall back on a traditional procurement driven thinking to using technology, which includes, RFPs and pilots and POCs and all that stuff that is there to manage enterprise risk, right? But I think the downside of that can be that it just causes organizations to be too slow in what is a very fast moving environment. So very cool to hear how Amazon's tackling that.
Well, we're doing that too. We're also working with several large companies externally to trial their offerings to see where it would fit, because I think it's a yes and in order to really get here to truly have this transformation, you have to be approaching it in multiple ways. I only mentioned a few of the mechanisms that we have within legal to ensure that we're adopting technology. We have all sorts of lunch and learns where people are putting out, explaining to each other in bigger and smaller circles the things that they're doing. On our antitrust team, we have a weekly AI office hour. It's optional, but everyone, you can drop in and say hey, I learned this, or hey, I'm trying to do this. Anybody know how? And it's not like any of us have any special experience. We're antitrust lawyers, but we're learning it together.
Who hosts the office hour?
The AI evangelist on our team, the person who has been given more time to learn these tools.
Love that. That's great. And really, this is a very different approach than what I'm used to hearing about in terms of encouraging this kind of experimentation and exploration. So it's build and buy. So I guess the obvious question is, when do you buy? How do you think about that decision? And what are the factors that go into making you realize, okay, this is something where we want to actually go out and do the more traditional kind of procurement approach?
So I'm not personally involved in the buy piece. I see it only like secondhand as stuff gets sent to me. Like, do you want to participate in this pilot? Or, hey, we have access to this thing. You want to try it out. So I can't say definitively what the answer on that one is, but from what I see, there's just a lot out there, and everyone has access to different information, and the information you're pulling from obviously impacts the outputs. So, and I'm sure having access to all the case law is going to get you with a different output than having access to all the deposition transcripts in a particular case, right? We have access to all the deposition transcripts in our cases, so we can build things on top of those. But we don't have access to, every case ever written. So I think it probably depends a little bit on the information that's available. And it also depends on price and speed and maybe ability to tailor to our needs. And, we can't build everything.
The issue of data is an interesting one I want to explore for a second. Obviously, structured data is the highest bar you could set for giving information to AI that it can process, handle, and get insights, extract information from. Have you had to do anything to clear up your data, clean up your data, create new data? Or have you been able to basically take the data you already have and leverage that?
For my work purposes, I've been able to use the data we have.
That's great.
And what I think that like one of the most interesting use cases for our team and for the teams that we work for, our outside counsel that we work with, is like using it as a litigating helper, right? Like when I talk about the folder structure, like every time you have a new litigation, wherever you are, inside counsel, outside counsel, government, you open a new folder and you have put in your new folder structure, right? Like your correspondence, your background information, your deposition testimony, your, memos to file, all those things, right? If every single one of those becomes a new, what's in Quick Suite we call a space, then you can ask questions to that space. And you can ask questions to a subset of the space. You can just ask questions about deposition testimony. You can just ask questions about, hot documents. You can ask questions about the whole space.
You mentioned that your role sits within enterprise risk, which I think is a very sensible way to think about the role of an internal antitrust lawyer. Has that informed how you use technology? And what I mean by that is, are you thinking about ways of how data can help you identify risk or identify maybe areas that require follow-up on the compliance side, et cetera? Because the things you listed to me were a lot of stuff that has to do with how you might do your day-to-day job of advisory, of supporting on a litigation or an M&A. But there's this other role that inside counsel has, right? Which is thinking more globally about enterprise risk. And I'm wondering if technology has played a role in that part of your job.
So we built not me, but somebody else at Amazon built something called like a horizon scanner, which is basically an agentic flow that you can customize by area of the business that you support or area of the interest for you. And it goes out whenever you run it and looks at what are the new changes? Is there any pending legislation? Is there any, who's talking about something in my area, so that you don't have to be beholden to whatever shows up in your inbox. And in my space, it's not as big of an issue, right? Like people tell me when there are big changes coming. I know when big changes are coming, right? But in like tariffs, that's been really hard to keep track of in the last year.
Yeah.
And so using an AI flow that really kind of scans the horizon on what's going on tariffs has been, I think, a game changer.
Okay. So we've got search, we've done internal collaboration, we've done end-to-end solutions for supporting business on advisory, horizon scanning. You mentioned process flows. I'm curious what you mean by that.
Yeah, Amazon is a fairly large company with a lot going on,
I've heard.
but not too big. And we've got a decent sized legal department, and we cover a lot of cases and a lot more like large variety of cases. And, there are lots of high volume, but low risk cases that come in. And so technology, and I don't work on those, so I don't have any, firsthand knowledge of it, but I know technology has been incredibly transformative there, both
Okay.
for inside and outside counsel. Like,
Okay.
we need true partnership from outside counsel to make this work.
All right. So far, people listening in who are benchmarking for where a corporate legal department can be, they are sweating bullets. They've heard this list and they're like, wow, we are way behind. So
I
let's
think that's
do,
true. This is all moving really fast. Everyone
um,
could get there.
people aren't going to catch up. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is pretty advanced stuff that you're describing so far. So let's put the pressure on the law firms here for a minute. You and I are both in-house lawyers. We work with sophisticated outside counsel to support us. Where are you seeing opportunities for technology to improve your relationship or dealings with outside counsel on matters?
The firms that I've worked with have been very receptive to make changes to get on board with us. And I've run trainings for them on cases that I'm on. And the best way I found to get them interested and to understand fully the opportunities here is to be very tactical and practical, right? Like, because I understand that they don't have the same support that I do, right? Like, it's not coming from their CEO that everyone needs to be using AI in their every life. It's not coming from their GC in the way that it is coming at Amazon. So I'm coming at it sideways with them. I'm trying to convince them that it's going to make their job easier. So, I take the opportunities when they come. If an expert report comes in, I get the team that I'm working with to come see, look, let's put that expert report into Quick and ask it, what's the most compelling part of the expert report? What's the least compelling part of this expert report? How does this compare to the draft that we've written? What pieces of our draft are missing to respond to this other expert report? What can you pull from everything that you have in our space related to this case to respond to those pieces that are missing? I find it very useful to be very practical about how we use it and the way that I expect them to use it.
That's really interesting. So I'm not asking you to name names, but when you talk about that kind of comparison analysis you're doing, that's using an external off the shelf tool or an internal capability?
That's using QuickSuite.
Wow. So legal corporates as educators for law firms of how to use technology in their practice. That's really interesting. I haven't heard the flow go that direction yet. And
Yeah, we view it as really a part of our jobs because if we look, this is a transformative time, right? Like, in a way that hasn't been before. And we're privileged at Amazon to have access to these tools and have the support to use them and the impetus to use them. So we're hearing
and
it every day.
how are the law firms you work with responding? Is it a positive response? Is there a feedback loop where you're then benefiting from what they're doing as well?
So this has also been an opportunity for a trial and for a lot of trial and error. Did my first training of a law firm, and I had over 50 people show up to the training in December of 2024. So over a year ago,
Oh,
um, before QuickSuite was built. It was on whatever tools we were using at the time. I can't even remember. And that was, I think, a light bulb moment for people in outside counsel to be like, whoa, this is real, but still like very worried about hallucinations, right? Like, but I can't rely on this. I heard from December until through a lot of last year, but we're not going to have it write the first draft of the brief, right? Or we're not going to, kind of like a lot of reasons why you shouldn't use AI and tools. And I've heard that has changed over time. Like, people have been much more responsive, or receptive and understanding. And in terms of the trial and error pieces, we had like a very formalized pilot in the early 2025 in terms of trying to figure out, having people at outside counsel kind of write down what they were using AI for and how many hours they think it was saving. And it was very hard to quantify. That pilot didn't work in that way. So we have shifted to more of a kind of quarterly check in on when we talk about budgets. Hey, what do you need for the next quarter? Why? And where are you going to use AI to save money?
These law firms are lucky to have you as a client because, you could always be charging them a consulting fee for your
I
efforts
have
because,
considered a second career.
like they should credit it against the billable hour or something, because this process of educating the law firms, you are sending them an extremely powerful market signal. If they're paying attention is, hey, law firm, you need to be doing this, because if you're not, then you're not going to be adding the value that we expect of you. And we can just insource this ultimately ourselves, right? Like, we don't necessarily want to. We might be perfectly happy continuing to use you, but we want to make sure you're doing the best and being the most efficient at it. That's a really powerful signal, and something that I'm sure the law firms are paying attention to, not just from interactions with you, but more generally seeing how corporate legal departments are adopting AI and talking about it.
Well, they're not just getting that signal from me. We had a conference with the outside lawyers that we use the most back in September. And both our general counsel and the head of enterprise risk gave that exact same message. Like, this is here. You need to use this. If you're not, we're going to switch to somebody else.
Experimentation, trying and failing. You mentioned to me when we hopped on before this call started, an AI science fair. Can you tell me more about that? Take me back to sixth grade. I want to go back to
Oh my
sixth
God.
grade.
Did you do science fairs when you were a kid?
Of course.
So I have kids in school, and they don't do science fairs now the way that we did when we were kids. But when we were kids, when I was a kid, every year I had to do the trifold, where you brought it in and so you went on the lunch table. Everyone was there. All the parents were there, and you had to explain your science project. You had to stand by your trifold and explain it to all the adults that showed up.
The volcano bubbling up,
Oh
all that stuff. I remember it.
my God. I did one where we tried to figure out if you could run faster before or after eating. And I made all my neighbors run around the block several times. They never let me live that down. So I don't know whose idea this was, but I think it was brilliant. Last year in October, we all got an email, the entire legal and public policy department, saying, hey, we're going to run an AI science fair at the holiday party. And here's what you need to do. You just, submit your idea. We'll tell you if you're picked. And then you come up, we will buy you the trifold, and you need to put your stuff on the trifold, and you'll stand there during the hour before the holiday party and, describe for everyone what you did. And there were over 60 entries in December. Our team won second prize, which I'm really excited about. And the judge was our general counsel, and he took it incredibly seriously. He went around to every single project and had a timer on. He could only spend 2 minutes, but he looked at every single project, talked to every single person there, and learned about all the things that were going on across, his department and in AI discovery and experimentation. And then he, at the party itself, he gave out prizes. And we weren't just talking to the GC about, our experiment. Everyone was allowed to walk around. So it was truly like being back in fourth grade.
This is the nerdiest holiday party ever. I love it.
People did love it.
Talk about setting the tone at the top. To
Totally.
have a GC walk around like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Our experiment, that was the litigation solution. It's using QuickSuite for a case and building on top.
Right. Because I meant to ask this, because QuickSuite is a general purpose tool. It's not like a legal vertical in any way,
Totally.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've heard of law firms doing AI hackathons, sort of similar. I think the challenge law firms run into is every hour an associate stop billing, there's this huge opportunity cost, right? So I think it's a little tougher for law firms to do this. I think the law firms are going to have to think more creatively about how they approach billable hour targets, et cetera, so that lawyers have the time to do a little bit of this exploration and experimentation. I think in-house legal corporates probably have a bit of an advantage there, right? Because we're a cost center, we're not really generating revenue by and large.
I mean, we're going to have to get rid of the billable hour for so many reasons. And we're going to have to train junior associates differently. And law school is going to have to change. right? Like all of this,
Yeah.
the whole process of training lawyers is going to have to be different.
I generally agree with that. The business model that will emerge would probably be some hybrid of all those things, but I agree that's definitely the trend. And from hearing you speak, I'm curious, the way that AI has impacted your practice as a lawyer, the way the technology has impacted your practice as a lawyer, is it fair to assume that this has sort of been a superpower? This is not something that's about to replace your job?
Well, okay. So I think if you're good at what you do, regardless of what it is, you're training people to replace you anyway, right? Like, so this is not training AI to replace me, but I think what it does is it frees you up to do the higher thinking, the harder stuff. You take the AI outputs and then you actually do something with it, right? Like, I'm not sending emails that come straight out of AI. I'm not, I'm not just telling our M&A team, yes, you can do that deal because AI says you can, right? Like that's irresponsible and it's wrong.
I hear you. And I think the other thing I try to tell people who don't really understand what our job is, and maybe this is a privilege of being a more senior lawyer. I don't know. Maybe it's a privilege of being an antitrust lawyer. I don't know. But my observation is that legal tech vendors would be surprised. There is not a ton to automate in my day. There is not a ton of inefficiency that is just the kind of drudgery that jumps to mind when you think about AI solutions for like a second year associate doing doc review. But there is a ton of opportunity, I think, to use AI to make me a better lawyer, to improve the accuracy of what I do, the effectiveness of what I do. And like you said, maybe not automate, but certainly simplify and quicken doing some tasks that are maybe lower value and being able to shift over to higher value. How would you sort of think about those different ways that AI has impacted your practice?
I agree with that. I think for the biggest way AI has impacted my practice is to try to figure out where I can find savings. And our biggest spend is outside counsel, obviously. And, you know, the biggest spend within there is large document reviews, production logs. There's a lot of drudgery in legal work. All those giant groups of associates, like that's a lot of that stuff can be streamlined. But then that again comes to how do you get to be the senior lawyer when, you don't have all those times with the documents, pouring through them as a second year. I don't know how we solve that.
I don't either. I don't either. Perhaps smaller teams, people are more in the room doing the calls with the client. They're in the room when the strategic decisions are being made. Maybe there's just more of an apprenticeship approach as opposed to the version of a law firm that I experienced as a junior lawyer was throwing projects at a lawyer and you learn on the job, you learn as you go, you kind of pick things up just from watching, but most of your time is spent on high volume sort of work. Maybe there's a bit of a shift away from that towards something a little bit more of an apprenticeship model, because I think you're right. If you don't have exposure to a significant high volume of work like that, then where are you learning how to do the job, frankly?
Yeah. And that's why I think law school has to shift too, right? Like law school is 3 very theoretical years on how, quote unquote, how to think and how to write, where they come up with a lot of people who actually aren't very good writers and need to spend a lot more time learning how to write. Um, and so law school is going to have to shift to be more practical too. And I think a more effective law school would come out with somebody who has some experience in some area of law, enough so that they have the start of the judgment to understand the output of AI, so that they're not providing AI as their thinking.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll admit I haven't thought too much about what the law school of the future looks like. I did see, even in my time as a law student and since, a shift towards more externships and more like practical programs and things like that. I don't know if that's continued since I graduated from law school quite a while ago now, but I have to imagine that AI will push that further.
Probably.
Well, Amy, this has been a fascinating conversation. I am really excited for you and the opportunities your job gives you to really use the latest and greatest that technology has to offer in the practice of law. Any takeaways or any last points you wanted to make for us or thoughts that you had about this topic?
It's truly been so fun. Like, I've been doing this for 22 years now. I've been an antitrust lawyer, and I gotten to the point where I had done all the types of antitrust work, and I kind of thought like my learning phase had kind of come to maybe its high point, and then this all kicked in, and it's really, if you take the opportunity to spend the time to learn and experiment, there's so much more opportunity. Like, the learning phase is not over by a long shot.
Well put. Well put. I had also government background like you. I thought, I don't know, did you work in a law firm? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I
Yeah.
started.
Same thing. So corporate law firm background. And I've loved going in house, and part of going in house means that some part of your day is not purely like legal analysis, right? You're getting a little closer to the business, and I've enjoyed that transition. And then now for me, technology has pushed that even further, where if you bolt onto that, the technology side, that also is not pure legal practice. So I find in a very exciting and fulfilling way, I see legal practice coming down a little bit as a percentage of what I do, with these other things filling it in more. Of course, they're all complementary, right? They all work together towards an outcome that's, risk assessment, risk mitigation, legal advice, but it's not just pure legal practice in a traditional sense. And I've really enjoyed that.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're
So
happy. I mean, like, it's great. This has been such an interesting time, and it will continue to be.
yeah, and thank you for helping grow the community of practicing lawyers talking and thinking about this.
Glad to be part of this.